Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like and maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. Today, me and Charles have come to the Chasewater Railway for their road and rail extravaganza, and as part of that they've got this wonderful lineup of plant, things that I really like. So me and Charles are going to have a nice day out, hang out, de-stress from the troubles of running a channel and just have a nice time. But first, I've been offered a drive in the 3CX, and I've always wanted to go in a proper JCB.
You what?
I'm having to go in this. I'll find you in a bit, mate. You'll be all right. Yes. This is great!
And as I hurtled off towards the public car park, Charles decided it was best he just walked away. Now, I have always had a thing for a proper JCB, and the 3CX is one of the most iconic of the entire range, and this thing was absolutely superb. And I've got to be honest with you, actually being able to take one out for a drive, this was a childhood dream come true. Certainly, it knocked the socks off my own Massey Ferguson 40. Admittedly, this one is a decade earlier, being one of the first 3CXs, replacing the 3C, which is more in line with my own Massey 40. The 40 is a tractor with bucket, loader, rear actor and a cab all kind of dropped on top. This thing is a purpose-built digger, part of a somewhat modular design which could be changed for different applications. Everything in it is so much better. The steering, the visibility, the way it drives, the power delivery, the controls, all of it. This really felt like a together, purpose-built machine. And my only real upset with it was that I was only taking it for a drive and I wasn't allowed to have a play with the back actor or the front loader. But this wasn't enough to spoil my day, and I quite happily trundled off, completely forgetting about Charles and the plan of having a day off and hanging out. However, Charles had forgotten about me and had found his one true love, and that is hurting his wallet by buying more model trains. Sometime later, and having done several laps and burnt through an awfully large amount of diesel, I suddenly remembered that I probably should be hanging out with my mate, and decided I would take the JCB back and returned it to the yard. But before I could find Charles, well, I got distracted. I really like tracked vehicles. Having spent all of his money in the superb model shop, Charles gave up all hope of waiting for me and decided to go and explore the engine shed and the museum. Meanwhile, I was loving life on this international crawler, which is known as the Drotosaurus. This is an International B100 Drot, which is a tractor loading shovel usually paired with the 4-in-1 bucket. That's the bucket that opens up as well, like a grabby claw. These things are pretty awesome and had a multitude of options. You could have the standard bucket, an angled dozer blade and use it as a bulldozer, or a rear ripper. I'm pretty sure I've also seen things like this fitted with a rear actor as well, which must be really strange and cool. And obviously, I absolutely adored it. There's something about the slow, almost ominous way that it tracks along, and the sense of power that goes with it is honestly quite addictive. It's also not the most easy thing to just hop in and drive. You see, when you put it into gear, it just drives forward and you don't need to do anything, it just goes. And then you pull the lever, as I've just done there, to disengage the drive, and then you can brake either track to spin. It just drives on its own. It's a very menacing thing with no safety. If I fall off, this just keeps on trundling off in a straight line forevermore. It's so brilliant. Health and safety really wasn't what it is now when this thing was designed. Meanwhile, Charles was doing some reading. and I was still churning up the fields, where I had learnt how to operate the hydraulics, which made me very happy. Trundling about on the field was much preferred to the roadway because as I skidded from side to side, I didn't ruin the roads. It also kept me away from all the cars, which was probably some relief to the owner and the rest of the crew at the railway, who looked on with absolute horror every time I went near. It's also important to note that this wonderful, ponderous machine has absolutely no suspension whatsoever, and the ride is quite rough as you're bouncing across all the ruts. And as I was enjoying myself, Charles was still looking at engines in the museum. Having managed to wrestle myself away from the drop, I headed back towards the station, where I was in time to see a couple of the lorries leave to go home, which made quite the addictive noise, so I stayed around to listen to that. Oh yeah, that's brilliant. And then, well, opportunity knocked. As I diligently searched for Charles both high and low, I passed this dump truck, and I couldn't help but notice that the keys had been left inside the ignition. And with nobody about, I figured that this was the perfect opportunity to hop on, fire it up, and take it for a little spin. Because obviously that's why the key had been left there. And in my excitement, I completely forgot about Charles again. But that's fine, he was probably enjoying the museum. And I certainly was enjoying charging about on the dump truck. This thing was awesome. Now, this is a 4-wheel drive machine with hydraulic steering, and it is a 2-cylinder diesel. And what's particularly interesting is it's the same basic unit as my little dump truck, which has 1 cylinder. This one's just got 2 of them slaved together. So it sounds awesome. And I love how high up I sit on it. The steering is super light, and it's actually quite rapid. And I really did enjoy thrashing around in it. What's particularly a note of this one is that the owner saved it from being scrapped. And I think that's great because it would be a crying shame to see this thing disappear, because it's just really good. What was also really good was seeing everybody's faces as I charged around between all the cars. Meanwhile, Charles continued to inspect the quality of the displays inside the museum, and I continued to charge around outside on the dumper truck. This thing was fantastic. It gave a real sense of being almost unstoppable, and the turning circle was brilliant. I could literally run circles around my cameraman. Certainly, this makes me think back to the 2-cylinder one that ages ago I tried to get started. It kind of makes me wish I'd got that. And as I headed off for another lap round the car park, Charles decided that enough was enough, and he was sick to the back teeth of my tomfoolery, and he was going for a ride on the train with or without me. Oh bless him, look, he had one last final look to see if I was coming. I wasn't, because I was on the dump truck. Motive power today was Wales Wood, a little 040 Hudswell Clark. Sometime after the train had left, I was forcibly removed from the dump truck and made my way towards the station, where I promptly got distracted by the 19RB making its way across the yard. This is a genuinely awesome piece of kit. Just look at it. Isn't it so imposing as it slowly tracks towards us? Most amusingly, to be able to steer, it's the same controls as you'd normally use to slew. It's very interesting, and everything's done on wires and clutches, and isn't it just awesome? This is one of those things that I would really love to have, but even I draw the line and go, I don't know where I'd put it. Interestingly, it's also got the same engine in it as my Ruston 48, which is pretty cool. So this thing, they wouldn't actually let me have a drive. So having watched it trundle past, I headed off to the platform in search of Charles. My search, however, didn't last very long because, rather predictably, once again, I got distracted. And this time it wasn't by plant. It was by this rather superb motor rail simplex. And after a quick chat with the driver, he invited me to come up for a go. I've always had a soft spot for these quirky little engines, and you'll notice that the size of the wheels looks quite large compared to the rest of the locomotive, and that's because they are just wagon wheels. They've been fitted with a gear so they can be chain driven off the axle. It meant that this thing didn't need specialised wheels for it. They were just standard wagon wheels and a lot cheaper to get hold of. The power plant behind us means that this thing will pull some 200 tonnes on the level, meaning it's notably more powerful than my own 48, which I think is absolutely bonkers. With that, we made our way back towards the station. And this thing is just like a standard motor rail simplex on the narrow gauge to drive. It's the same mechanism. You've got a foot clutch, a couple of gears, and forward and reverse. It's really quite simple. This one has been re-engined and now has an air-cooled 4-pot diesel in it, which does admittedly make it a bit more powerful than it would have been when it was brand new. The owner has also carried out all the restoration and done a stunning job. Meanwhile, Charles was at the other end of the railway watching Waleswood run round its train. The sensible thing to do at this point would have been to wait for him and the train to return. Once again, I got distracted. There are several key points that makes me excited about a vehicle. 1 is rarity, 2 is obscurity, and 3 is quirkiness. And this thing had all of these in droves, being the only one of its type that we know to exist. And so when they said, do I want to have a drive? The answer was obviously yes. It's got steps at the back to get into it. It's just so very cool. Look at it. The machine is a Weathers Hill 12 HD, and it survives as the loader for the railway for loading coal into the bunkers of steam engines. And it sounds absolutely fantastic. Everything about this machine is so heavily engineered. It's a proper beast and a half. It's just the kind of noise that makes me happy. It's so unnecessarily over-engineered, just the size of the rams, it just screams power. And despite that, the steering's really easy with the power assisted steering, providing you've got enough revs on. I absolutely love this machine. It's just brilliant, and we think it was built at some point during the 1970s, so it's got real pedigree, and indirectly by being used at the railway, has ensured its preservation. And as I headed off to do yet more laps around the car park, Waleswood, its train, and Charles arrived back at Brownhill Station. Now, you might have thought, like a good friend, I'd have parked up the loader and gone to meet Charles on the platform as he arrived. No, I was still charging about in the car park. Which meant that as Charles did get off the train, I was still nowhere to be seen, which probably put him into a really good mood, so he went off to search for an ice cream. And eventually, I got the idea that I should probably put the digger away and go and find Charles.
Ah, there you are. Oh, did you give me one?
Oh, well, it'd be nice, considering I brought you for a nice day out to hang out, have fun together and be, matey.
I haven't seen you. Not at all.
I've not gone anywhere, I've been around. Right. Fine. Well, if you have enjoyed this video here at the Chasewater Railway and you want more information, check out their website in the video description. Have liked it? How about clicking someone over his face, the ungrateful whatever, for other videos like this? And with that, I'm going to find myself an ice cream. Thanks for watching. Terra. Ungrateful swine.